March 1944, Pacific Ocean. The sea stretched in every direction, an endless metallic gray broken only by rolling swells and drifting haze. To the east, convoys of American ships steamed toward the advancing front, part of a logistical system so vast it seemed impossible only 3 years earlier. In those columns of gray-painted hulls was a single small vessel, barely 300 feet long, modestly armed, and crewed by barely 200 sailors. Its name, stenciled neatly across its stern, read USS England, DE 635. Few outside her crew had ever heard of her. Fewer still imagined she would soon achieve one of the most extraordinary combat records in naval history. At that moment, the war in the Pacific had entered its decisive phase. By early 1944, the United States had recovered from the disasters of 1941 to 42. The Japanese Empire, stretched from Burma to the Gilbert Islands, was beginning to falter under the weight of American industry. The Central Pacific Drive under Admiral Chester Nimitz was grinding westward, seizing island airfields one by one. In the Southwest Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur's forces were pushing north toward the Philippines. Yet, amid those offensives, the undersea threat still loomed. Japanese submarines, though far fewer than Germany's U-boats, remained deadly, stalking troop convoys and supply lines that snaked thousands of miles across the Pacific. Each sinking could mean hundreds of soldiers lost and critical supplies delayed. The U.S. Navy's answer to that hidden menace was a new class of ship, the destroyer escort. These were not the glamorous fleet destroyers that screened carriers and traded salvos with surface raiders. They were smaller, slower, and cheaper, built by the dozens in American shipyards to protect merchant and invasion convoys. Displacing around 1,400 tons, a destroyer escort carried a single 3-inch or 5-inch gun, depth charges, sonar, and radar. It was a utilitarian design, functional, not beautiful. And its crews were often young reservists, trained in weeks rather than years. But what the ships lacked in prestige, they made up for in endurance and specialization. Their task was simple and unforgiving: hunt submarines. The England belonged to the Buckley class, among the earliest destroyer escorts to combine traditional depth charge racks with a radical new weapon, the Hedgehog. The Hedgehog was a British invention adopted by the Americans in 1943. It fired a salvo of 24 small spigot-mounted bombs ahead of the ship instead of rolling them off the stern. Each bomb detonated only on contact. That meant a sonar operator could maintain contact right up to the attack and instantly know if he had scored a hit. It was the first truly accurate anti-submarine weapon of the war. The England herself was built at the Bethlehem Steel Shipyard in San Francisco and commissioned on 10 December 1943. She was named after Ensign John C. England, a 20-year-old naval officer killed aboard the battleship Oklahoma at Pearl Harbor. By spring 1944, her young crew had completed their shakedown cruise off San Diego and were learning the precise, technical art of anti-submarine warfare. Under Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton, the ship's officers drilled relentlessly: sonar tracking, Hedgehog firing solutions, depth charge reloads, radar sweeps. Among them was a quiet, methodical junior officer, Lieutenant Junior Grade William or Bill Cook, whose mastery of sonar would soon prove decisive. To understand the odds the England faced, one must understand the state of Japan's submarine force at that time. By mid-1944, Japan had roughly 170 operational submarines. Unlike the Germans, who used theirs to strangle commerce, the Imperial Japanese Navy regarded submarines as extensions of the battle fleet, meant to scout and attack enemy warships. That doctrine limited their impact, but individual Japanese submarines were large, fast, and well-armed. Many carried long-range torpedoes capable of crippling carriers or transports with a single hit. Others served as pickets, spread across the Pacific to warn of approaching American invasions. It was these picket lines that would soon collide with the England. In April 1944, U.S. cryptanalysts at Pearl Harbor, successors of the team that had broken Japan's naval codes at Midway, intercepted messages detailing a new Japanese defensive plan. The Imperial Navy had established an arc of submarines stretching east of the Admiralty and Solomon Islands. Their mission was to detect and report any Allied movement toward the Marianas. Each submarine held a fixed patrol sector, surfacing daily to transmit weather and contact reports back to Japan. The codebreakers relayed their findings to Admiral William F. Halsey's command at South Pacific Fleet Headquarters. Halsey saw an opportunity. If his destroyer escorts could intercept and eliminate that picket line, they would blind Japan's early warning system ahead of the upcoming invasion of Saipan. Thus was born Operation A-Go Counter-Submarine Sweep, a coordinated effort by several small anti-submarine groups to clear the approaches. The England, along with sister ships George and Raby, were assigned to one such group. They departed Espirito Santo in the New Hebrides in mid-May 1944, ordered to patrol northeast toward Bougainville. The area was vast, thousands of square miles of open ocean, and the submarines they sought were invisible beneath the waves. Success would depend entirely on sonar skill, discipline, and luck. Aboard the England, the crew's life was routine but intense. Watches rotated every 4 hours. The sonar room, a cramped steel compartment deep within the hull, was manned continuously. Operators listened through headsets for the faint echoes of a submarine's hull. Pings that returned milliseconds after each transmitted pulse. In calm seas, the difference between an echo from a school of fish and the hull of an enemy sub could be a subtle change in tone or timing. Cook drilled his team to recognize those nuances instinctively. Above them, on the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Pendleton paced with binoculars, his mind half on navigation, half on the unseen world below. On deck, gunners maintained their 3-inch and 20mm Ehrlichens, though surface combat was unlikely. Below decks, the engineering crew coaxed the ship's turboelectric engines to a steady 21 knots, the Buckley's maximum. Mess cooks served coffee thick enough to stand a spoon in. The ship's interior smelled of oil, sweat, and paint. It was an ordinary routine for an unglamorous warship. The sailors knew their mission was dangerous, but rarely glorious. Destroyer escorts seldom made headlines. They escorted convoys, rescued survivors, and guarded empty seas. Yet there was a quiet pride in their purpose. Each man understood that a single transport carrying troops or fuel could mean victory or failure hundreds of miles away. If their small ship could prevent even one submarine attack, it was worth the risk. Technically, the England's anti-submarine suite was advanced for its size. In addition to the Hedgehog, she carried depth-charge tracks, K-guns for lateral throws, and a QGB series sonar capable of both active and passive detection. Her radar, though primitive by modern standards, could spot surface submarines miles away at night. The integration of these systems, radar for detection, sonar for tracking, Hedgehog for killing, made her a potent predator despite her size. The men who served aboard her were young, mostly in their early 20s, drawn from across the United States. Few had ever seen the Pacific before the war. Training at San Diego and Pearl Harbor had taught them procedure, but real combat experience was rare. By May 1944, however, the destroyer escort fleet had matured. Lessons from the Atlantic U-boat war had filtered into every manual. Pendleton and his officers knew the theoretical playbook by heart. Maintain sonar contact, attack quickly, avoid losing range, never assume the target is destroyed until oil or debris surfaces. As England steamed toward her patrol area, Allied intelligence refined its reports. On May 18, an American patrol plane sighted and bombed a Japanese submarine, believed to be I-16, north of Bougainville. The aircraft's depth bombs missed, but the submarine's approximate location was transmitted to nearby anti-submarine ships. The message reached England within hours. Pendleton altered course to intercept. That transmission would mark the beginning of one of the most remarkable 12-day hunts in naval history. By nightfall, the destroyer escort group, England, George, and Raby, had taken formation in choppy seas. Radar screens glowed faint green in the darkened CIC, Combat Information Center. Sonar pings echoed rhythmically through the hull. Somewhere beneath the Pacific swells, the first target waited, unaware of the danger closing in. For the sailors aboard the England, there was nothing extraordinary about that evening. The stars were sharp, the horizon clear, and the engines drummed steadily. No one yet realized that within 2 weeks, their small ship would destroy 6 enemy submarines, an achievement unmatched before or since. Hunting the Wolves, May 18 to 26, 1944. May 18, 1944, north of Bougainville, Solomon Sea. The sea was calm that evening, a flat sheet of dull silver under a veiled moon. The destroyer escorts, USS England, USS George, and USS Raby, were steaming in line abreast, sonar operators straining at their headsets. They were hunting a Japanese submarine reported earlier by a patrol aircraft, a large I-class boat believed to be somewhere east of St. George's Channel. At 13 knots, the England advanced cautiously. Her sonar room was silent except for the rhythmic ping every 2 seconds, the sound reverberating through steel bulkheads. At 0125 on May 19, a faint echo returned, steady, metallic, and unmistakably artificial. The sonar operator leaned toward his microphone. Contact bearing 240, range 1,500 yards. Strong echo. Sounds like a sub. Within seconds, the ship's bridge came alive. Lieutenant Commander Pendleton snapped orders. The helmsman turned the wheel slightly to port. Speed reduced. In the sonar room, Lieutenant J.G. Bill Cook took over the headset, his voice calm but focused. He began marking the range and bearing on the plotting board, watching how the echoes shifted as the England moved. The pattern told him that target was deep and maneuvering slowly, likely trying to evade. Above deck, sailors ran to their battle stations. The crew had practiced this drill countless times, but this time it was real. The Hedgehog projectors were armed. Each of the 24 small bombs carried 30 pounds of Torpex explosive. They would be launched in a pattern ahead of the ship, covering an elliptical area roughly 200 feet across. If any of them struck the submarine's hull, the explosion would be immediate. Pendleton's voice came through the bridge intercom. Sonar control, maintain contact, prepare for Hedgehog run. The first attack run began just before dawn. The England increased speed, her bow cutting through the calm sea. Cook's steady voice directed the helm. Left 2 degrees, range 1,200, steady, mark. A moment later, the Hedgehog system fired with a sharp mechanical thunk. Dozens of small projectiles arced ahead and disappeared into the water, leaving a pattern of ripples. The crew waited in tense silence. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. No explosion. The Hedgehogs only detonated on contact. The submarine had slipped away. Pendleton turned sharply on the bridge. Reacquire. Go around again. For the next hour, the England made repeated sonar runs, trying to pin down the evasive target. The Japanese submarine, later confirmed as I-16, was an experienced boat. It maneuvered deep, trying to break sonar contact with sharp turns. But Cook and his team maintained the echo, adjusting constantly, their training showing in every correction. At 0233, they launched a second salvo. Again, silence. A third attack. Then, a fourth. The fourth pattern landed perfectly. 14 seconds after firing, a dull underwater explosion rolled up through the hull, then another, then a third. The sea shuddered, and a column of air bubbles and oil rose to the surface. Direct hits, Cook reported calmly. At dawn, floating debris confirmed the kill. The England's first victory was complete. The I-16, one of Japan's larger ocean-going submarines, was gone with all 107 on board. The young crew cheered briefly, but the celebration was restrained. Pendleton reminded them there were more contacts ahead. May 22, 3 days later. After refueling at Seidler Harbor on Manus Island, the task group received new orders. Another Japanese submarine had been sighted near the Bismarck Sea, part of the same picket line. The England and her consorts were directed north once more. The weather was worsening, choppy seas, low cloud cover, but the ships pressed on. At 700 hours, radar picked up a faint surface contact 8 miles ahead, then lost it. The target had submerged. Cook's sonar soon reacquired it, bearing 020 degrees. This submarine, the RO-106, was smaller than the previous I-class, but more agile. The England moved in for attack. The first Hedgehog pattern missed. The second salvo hit at 0814. 6 underwater detonations echoed in rapid succession. When the turbulence cleared, wreckage and oil slicks floated to the surface. The kill was confirmed. 2 submarines in 4 days. When Pendleton sent his report to headquarters, the reply was brief but telling. Continue operations. Excellent work. By now, word of the England's success was spreading through the fleet. Anti-submarine warfare groups across the Pacific began reviewing her sonar methods and Hedgehog tactics. The destroyer escort sonar team, under Cook's direction, had refined a system of rapid target reacquisition and plotting that allowed near-constant pressure on the enemy. Each kill made them faster. May 24. The sea was rough and visibility poor. At 2100 hours, sonar picked up another echo, RO-116, patrolling near Manus. Despite high seas, the England maintained steady tracking. The first Hedgehog pattern missed. The second hit, and within seconds, another explosion rolled through the darkness. The sub's air tanks ruptured audibly through sonar, followed by the unmistakable roar of collapsing pressure hull. 4 submarines destroyed. The England had become the most lethal anti-submarine ship in the Pacific. May 26th. Another contact was made. RO-108, west of New Ireland. The England moved in alone while George and Raby screened the area. The submarine attempted to dive deep, but the sonar operator reported consistent bearing. Pendleton ordered full speed ahead and fired a single Hedgehog salvo. Seconds later, 2 detonations erupted, followed by a massive explosion. The submarine disintegrated. Oil and wreckage surfaced minutes later. By the evening of May 26th, the England had sunk 5 submarines in 7 days. Her success was unmatched in the war's history. The sailors aboard her were proud but exhausted. The constant tension of sonar tracking, listening, plotting, adjusting, was mentally draining. Cook and his team often worked 20-hour shifts. Below decks, machinists and electricians kept the engines and generators running non-stop. The Hedgehog launchers were checked, reloaded, and checked again. Despite the fatigue, morale was high. Letters home spoke of good hunting, but wartime censorship prevented any mention of what they had done. No one outside the command knew how extraordinary the record was becoming. At the same time, within the Japanese High Command, panic was spreading. Reports of missing submarines came one after another. Tokyo's naval staff could hardly believe them. 6 submarines had been assigned to the picket line. Within a week, 5 were silent. Rear Admiral Harada, commander of Japan's Submarine Squadron 7, reported to Combined Fleet Headquarters that contact with the entire line was lost. The Imperial Navy began pulling back remaining submarines, fearing an Allied trap. But for the England, the work wasn't finished. Another radio intercept indicated one last submarine, RO-105, was still transmitting in the area. Orders were simple: find and destroy it. By the end of May 26th, the England and her sister ships had rewritten anti-submarine warfare history. Their success was no accident of chance. It was the product of discipline, technology, and precision. The quiet triumph of sonar operators and engineers whose instruments turned sound into victory. What lay ahead would complete their legend, a final engagement that would stun even the hardened veterans of the Pacific Fleet. The Last Hunt, May 26 through 31, 1944. May 26, 1944, dusk over the Solomon Sea. The sky was streaked with low clouds and fading sunlight. After days of continuous operations, USS England, USS George, and USS Raby were still patrolling east of New Ireland. On board England, the crew was bone-tired. Some men had not slept properly in 48 hours, yet no one complained. Every man knew they were hunting the final submarine of Japan's picket line, the RO-105. Intelligence had intercepted brief transmissions from the Japanese sub earlier that day. The tone of those signals was frantic, broken, as if sent by a commander realizing his entire line had vanished. U.S. naval intelligence triangulated the source, north of Buka Island, near coordinates 01 degrees south, 153 degrees east. The England's group was ordered to intercept. At 1745, sonar picked up the faintest contact. The echo was erratic, buried in background noise. Lieutenant J.G. Cook listened carefully, adjusting the game. "That's something metallic," he said quietly. "Bearing 280, about 2,000 yards." Commander Pendleton gave the order. "Helm, come to 280, maintain speed. Sonar, stay on her." The England closed the distance. The contact sharpened. Cook confirmed. It was a submarine, deep, moving slowly westward. The final wolf of Japan's pack was in their sights. The battle for RO-105. The England's first attack run began after sunset. The sonar trace showed RO-105 maneuvering aggressively, a sign of an experienced captain. The submarine was turning sharply, attempting to evade the destroyer's approach. At 1832, the Hedgehog fired. 24 small projectiles arced ahead into the dark sea. Then silence. No explosions. The sub had slipped away. Pendleton ordered an immediate turn for a second run. The contact faded. The Japanese commander had gone deep, perhaps more than 400 feet, where sonar echoes weakened and detection grew difficult. For the next hour, England's sonar crew struggled to maintain lock, recalibrating bearings in heavy seas. At 1940 hours, a sharp echo returned, strong, rhythmic, moving fast. Cook shouted into the intercom, "Contact reacquired, range 1,000 yards." Pendleton swung the ship around again. The second Hedgehog pattern launched. Nothing. A third run. Still no hit. By now, the submarine was turning south. The U.S. ships were running low on fuel and ammunition, but no one spoke of breaking off. Pendleton's log for that night reads simply, "Contact determined to be persistent and skillful. Must be destroyed." At midnight, George joined in, taking over sonar contact while England maneuvered for another approach. Through the next day, May 27th, the chase continued. It became a relentless cycle of detection, loss, and reacquisition. Each time RO-105 tried to surface or reposition, radar or sonar would find her again. By May 28th, 3 destroyer escorts, England, George, and Raby, were joined by 2 more, Spangler and Hazelwood. Together, they formed a circular trap, combing the sea with sonar. The Japanese submarine was effectively surrounded. The kill. At 7:30 hours on May 31, after nearly 5 days of intermittent pursuit, sonar aboard England picked up RO-105 once more, a clean, hard echo at 1,500 yards. Cook confirmed. Pendleton ordered battle stations. The crew prepared the Hedgehog for what they knew could be the last attack of the campaign. Every man on the bridge and in the sonar room was silent. Pendleton turned to his helmsman. "This is it. Let's make it count." The England steadied on course. The sonar trace held steady, a perfect firing position. Cook's voice came over the intercom. "Range 1,200. Steady. Mark." Pendleton gave the order. "Fire." The Hedgehog launches recoiled with a muffled thump. Seconds later, an explosion. Then another. Then a rapid chain of detonations. In the sonar room, the echo disappeared instantly, replaced by a chaotic roar of collapsing pressure hull and escaping air. On the surface, the sea erupted with oil, debris, and pieces of shattered hull plating. At 7:59 7th, USS England confirmed her sixth submarine kill in 12 days. RO-105 had been destroyed, with all hands aboard. Pendleton logged the result in measured language. Enemy submarine destroyed. Operation complete. The ship's crew allowed themselves a single, brief cheer, then silence. The young men of England looked across the empty sea where an enemy had vanished, not out of hatred, but the realization that their tiny ship had achieved something no other had ever done. Aftermath. When England returned to port at Manus Island in early June, her arrival drew attention across the fleet. Vice Admiral William F. Halsey personally sent a message of congratulations. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy. In Washington, naval analysts studied the ship's sonar data and Hedgehog records. The results stunned them. 6 submarines destroyed in 12 days, all verified, was a record unmatched in anti-submarine warfare. For comparison, most U.S. escort groups considered themselves successful if they sank a single submarine in an entire patrol. The success also revealed something crucial. The combination of precise sonar, disciplined teamwork, and the Hedgehog weapon system had changed the nature of naval warfare. The England's performance validated years of research by the U.S. Navy's Bureau of Ordnance and the British Admiralty, both of which had worked on head-throwing weapons and improved sonar. The England sonar crew became case studies in training manuals. Lieutenant Cook's plotting techniques were adopted across the Pacific. His method, keeping constant contact through micro-corrections, became the standard for future destroyer escorts. For Japan, the consequences were severe. The 6 submarines destroyed by England were not random patrols. They were part of a planned early warning network meant to detect Allied invasions across the Central Pacific. With that network obliterated, the Imperial Navy's situational awareness collapsed. When U.S. forces launched the invasion of the Marianas weeks later, Japanese submarines failed to provide any warning. One Japanese staff officer later wrote in his post-war report, "The picket line was wiped out before it even reported sighting the enemy. It was as though our eyes had been blinded." Legacy. The USS England, DE 635, continued operations through 1944 and 1945, escorting convoys and engaging in additional anti-submarine patrols. In May 1945, off Okinawa, she was struck by a Japanese dive bomber. The ship was badly damaged, 6 crewmen killed, but she did not sink. After repairs, she was decommissioned in 1946. Her total record stood: 6 enemy submarines destroyed in 12 days, a feat no other ship in history has matched. Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, personally commended the ship and its crew. His report to the Navy Department concluded, "The England's achievement is the result of training, teamwork, and the effective use of new technology. It stands as a model of anti-submarine warfare." The phrase, "there'll always be an England," became a Navy tradition. When the next USS England, DLG 223, was commissioned in 1963, her crest bore the image of 6 submarine silhouettes, each representing a kill. In naval academies and anti-submarine schools, the name England became shorthand for precision and perseverance. For decades, sonar operators studied her after-action reports to learn how skill, discipline, and calm judgment could overcome even the most elusive threat. Epilogue. Looking back, the story of USS England is more than just a record of kills. It marks a turning point in the Pacific War, the moment when Allied technology and training outpaced Japan's ability to adapt. It is also the story of ordinary men aboard a small ship who executed their duty with quiet professionalism. They did not fight in the great carrier battles or command powerful cruisers. They hunted unseen enemies in the vastness of the ocean, guided only by sound, and, in doing so, they saved countless Allied lives. When Japan's Navy learned that one tiny destroyer had wiped out an entire submarine squadron in less than 2 weeks, the reaction was disbelief. The Imperial Navy, which had once ruled the Pacific with stealth and terror beneath the waves, had been humbled by a 1,200-ton escort ship and a crew of mostly 20-year-olds from across America. The shock was not only tactical, it was psychological. It signaled the collapse of Japan's undersea warfare and the irreversible shift of momentum in the Pacific. In the end, the story of USS England is the story of modern warfare itself, where innovation, coordination, and human discipline outweigh size, firepower, or prestige. Her logbooks, preserved today at the Naval History and Heritage Command, still bear the quiet typed lines from those 12 days in May 1944, brief, factual, and unemotional. Enemy submarine located. Hedgehog fired. Multiple explosions heard. Contact lost. Probable destruction. Each of those entries represents an entire world vanished beneath the sea. Each marks a step toward the Allied victory. And together, they tell how one small ship changed the course of the Pacific War, the tiny machine that shocked Japan's Navy.